In this video from Workflow Mania, we're going to talk about administrative settings, or what are known as admin settings. And these are found all in the secondary navigation bar toward the top of the screen, where it says Settings, Staff, Service Items, Parts and Labor, Data Export, and so on. And we're going to start by clicking on Settings. When you click on Settings, it allows you to configure your store, service tickets, printout preferences, service items, and parts and labor settings. There are quite a few fields here. Some have drop-down lists that you can pick from. For example, the very first one, Store Type. You can name your store, give your street address, city, state, zip code, and so on. Phone number, a secondary phone number if you have it, a fax number. Time difference. This is plus or minus from Eastern Time. And then finally, a store email, and if there's a different one and you ever have customers pay you via PayPal, you could put an email for that as well. Scrolling down, we'll work on service ticket settings, where you can set up the terms for tickets. You could enter a prefix for the ticket in the ticket prefix box. For example, if you have multiple stores and you want your tickets to be prefixed by store number, for example. And then the final field here is to enter the next ticket number. So if you're just starting out, you can put a beginning ticket number here. If you leave this value 0, the ticket numbers will be numbered in a month, day, year number format. Next is printer preferences. The first option here is whether or not to include history on receipts. You have two options, show history on printed receipt or hide history on the printed receipt. The next option is to configure ticket notes on printed receipts on the ticket notes receipt drop-down list. Same kind of options here, show ticket notes on the printed receipt or hide ticket notes on the printed receipt. And then finally, images on the printout. If you've uploaded images for your receipts and wish to have them included on the receipts, you can make that selection here. Next, we'll scroll down to service item settings. This controls who is able to add service items on the fly within the system. The two options are anybody can add a service item on the fly, or only admins can add service items on the fly. And then you have up to 3 service item labels. However, only the first one is mandatory. You must enter something there. The next section is for parts and labor settings. The next field is enter default tax on parts, and you enter that in a decimal format. For example, if your tax was 8.16%, you'd enter that as 0.0816. Next is the parts and labor rules. This is much like the last section. This determines who can add parts or labor on the fly within the system. Your two choices are anybody can or only admins can. Next are 3 fields dealing with commissions. You can set up no commission on parts and labor, commission on parts only, or commissions on parts and labor. Then you set up the actual commission percentages on parts, and if applicable, the commission percentage on labor, using the same format that we did for taxes above. Next, you enter the name of the part in the part description label number 1 text entry box. This field is mandatory. And if you're configuring more parts, you can enter part description label number 2 and number 3 as needed. The final field here is to notify you whether or not inventory is low. You can activate a low inventory trigger with this option. Select the required option as yes or no from the low inventory trigger drop-down list. And once you're satisfied with all of your settings here, of course, you can scroll back up and make any changes you need to make. Click on the Submit button to save your changes.